What happens to a person who is a fool because he doesn't think for himself? Like Maimonides attributes to rabbis who are considered among the sages of Israel, whom he defines as fools, they know only the Talmud and do not think independently. So what actually happens to such a rabbi, let's say like Ovadia Yosef, who is a fool because he didn't study philosophy, didn't engage in independent or critical thinking, but is very knowledgeable in the Talmud and knows all the halakhic rulings of the Geonim, the Rishonim, and the Akaronim, and the entire chain of rabbis, as anyone who looks into his books, Yabia Omer, can see. He has insane knowledge and countless citations, but he doesn't think. He simply regurgitates what he consumes, constantly reading and copying, but he has no independent thought. What happens to such a person emotionally, in terms of conscience and morally? He essentially becomes a robot, completely devoid of emotion. And to illustrate this, rabbis who do not study, do not think, and lack independent thought, also lack emotional independence. And so, like robots, they write halakhic rulings. The example I want to give you is from my book, Edat Kama al Yotzreha. This book is actually, it collects the halakot that relate to non-Jews, how halacha treats non-Jews, what the halachic rulings are in the Shulchan Aruch regarding the treatment of women, secular Jews, and animals. Anyone who reads the book and internalizes the wickedness of the religion, when you compare it to secular morality, human liberty, human dignity, and freedom, equality, the idea that all people are born free, you simply have to ask, why do we even take this whole institution called the chief rabbinate seriously? Why would a secular Jewish state, meaning one that supports... Why should human liberty grant legitimacy to rabbinical institutions that have simply lost all semblance of humanity? In terms of reason, they scorn reason, and that's why they build walls of ignorance around the yeshivas and don't let them read things. Not even Maimonides' Guide for the Perplexed, because it encourages a bit of critical thinking. Why does the state grant them legitimacy? Anyone who reads this book and accepts this cruel law must internalize that the rabbinical institutions must be abolished. That is, there should be no city rabbis, no chief rabbis, no rabbinical courts, and also no educational institutions like small and large yeshivas. So now I will read to you from the chapter of the law that deals with non-Jews. And this is on page 132 for those who already have my book. And there it discusses what happens regarding saving a life overriding Shabbat. What happens when the life is not Jewish? So the Shulchan Aruch, Orach Chaim, section 330, paragraph 2, says the following, and I quote, "A non-Jewish woman, one does not deliver her baby on Shabbat. You do not help a non-Jewish woman give birth on Shabbat, because delivering a baby involves desecrating Shabbat, and a non-Jewish woman is not considered a life for which Shabbat should be desecrated to save her." Here is the first horror. Now let's see how it turns out. The chief rabbi of Israel, by his name, Wadi Yosef, in the book Yafia Omer, states that his portion of sin is the sin. A science lifestyle taught sin. And I quote, "Look, I'm reading this and that. Dirty, very dirty, so angry. I truly don't know how to describe my feelings at all. Sorry." So he writes as follows about a distinguished non-Jewish doctor who was a friend of Israel. He tells a story. This is how the story goes. There was a distinguished non-Jewish doctor, a friend of Israel, who saved and revived many Jewish lives. He saved them from death, and he would also treat poor Jewish patients for free, without any payment or charge. This respected doctor in due time fell seriously ill on the Holy Shabbat. And he sent for a Jewish doctor to come to him and perform bloodletting, because at that time they believed that bloodletting helped with healing, and if he refused to go to him on Shabbat, there would be great enmity. Pay attention to the discussion. There would be great enmity, as if by not going it would cause hatred. So the question is it worthwhile to go in order to prevent hatred so that his heart does not turn against us? And then, if he is saved and ultimately survives, this non-Jew with his good heart, who saved Jews from death and treated poor Jews for free, would turn his heart against us as well, becoming one of our enemies, and the reward for good would be evil. He would also refrain from treating Jewish patients. And on this significant matter, Rabbi Ovadia Yosef explicitly states that in this particular story, they indeed permitted the Jewish doctor to desecrate the holy Shabbat. They actually allowed him to heal the doctor. What? Why exactly? Now look at this. They begin to explain their reasoning. This is a place to say, let's say, what is even the question here? Here is a person who is in danger, who also helped us and even treated people for free, saving many Jews. What? What at all? Why are you even raising a doubt? Do you understand how insensitive Ovadia Yosef is? Notice what I am saying. Since the Jewish doctor is the one who is going to desecrate Shabbat in order to save the non-Jewish doctor who saved many Jews and treated them for free, since the Jewish doctor does not intend this for its own sake, but rather to save himself and the Jewish patients, pay attention, if we save the non-Jewish doctor, he will live and then he will continue to heal Jews and save them from death. That is the reason I am going to desecrate Shabbat, to save him. Do you understand why his hand didn't tremble? Ovadia Yosef's hand didn't tremble because he is a fool. He is foolish in mind and foolish in emotion. That is the reason, and I continue, that since the Jewish doctor does not intend this except to save himself and the sick of his people Israel from danger, there is no prohibition here, and it should be permitted by the power of leniency. That is, sometimes it is preferable to be lenient in halakha and to rule permissively. But why is it preferable to rule permissively? What is the reasoning? That in the end, if this doctor is saved, he will heal the sick of his people Israel. Tell me. How angry I get when I read this. Wow. How do people even judge? Is it even a question whether to save another person who helped for free? A kind-hearted person. Are you really debating whether to heal him or not? Do you understand what intellect does to people? It makes them scorn wisdom and causes them to become numb